This game against USC is the last chance for the Terps to turn the season around.
You are Locked On Terps, your daily podcast on the Maryland Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, everyone? I'm Tre Moore, host of Locked On Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So thank you for making us part of your day, and also publisher on InsideBlackandGold.net. Make sure you guys go to InsideBlackandGold.net for all your latest Terps news. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. I think this matchup against USC is the last chance for the Maryland Terrapins to turn the season around. And I also think it's the last chance for a big, huge win for the Terps. So far, this season has gone, I would say, probably about as bad as you could have imagined. I don't think you could have asked for probably a worse start. The only thing that maybe would have made it worse is losing to Virginia. But in terms of how the way we started this year, it really doesn't get much worse. Losing a heartbreaker to Michigan State in a game where we were up for most of the game, a game where we were up 7-14 after the first quarter, a game where we were leading for a lot of the game, a game where I thought we had it in the bag, a game where we were leading with the ball in the fourth quarter and losing that game to Michigan State, and then losing to the 16th team in the country now, Indiana, which could have actually been a really big win on the season, in a game that we looked back at and been like, oh, Indiana was a really good team, and we were able to beat them. But on the road, we couldn't get it done. Even after forcing Indiana to 4 turnovers, we still were not able to beat the Hoosiers. And then, of course, Northwestern, the worst loss of the year to a team that we were just better than, projected to be better than, losing by 27 at home after the bye to Northwestern. That's something that just can't really happen. So you couldn't imagine a worse start for the Maryland Terrapins. It's about as bad as a start that Coach Locksley has really had over the last couple of years. And I think that when you look at the season, there's not unlimited times, there's not unlimited opportunities to be able to turn the season around for the Terps. And I think you got to look at this game against USC, and what I see it as is the last game, the last opportunity for the Terps to turn it around. I don't see another game on the schedule where we are going to really be able to turn this season around, if I'm being realistic. If I'm saying, when I say turn around, I mean instill some confidence, make us feel solid about the season. Like if you beat USC and then you beat Minnesota, even if you lose to Oregon, I think you still turn the season around and you can take a lot of positives. And then Rutgers, Iowa, if you find a way to win any of those games, like you're feeling pretty good. To USC, even if you beat Minnesota, you're still not feeling great. And then you drop Oregon as well, and maybe you drop Rutgers too, or Iowa, one of those two, you're not feeling great. But if you beat USC, I think you can turn this thing around. I know we have some really hard games left on the schedule, and I know there's some big-time matchups. I mean, we play 2 of the top 4 teams in the country in terms of the current ranking. I'm sure it'll change a little bit, but Oregon's ranked number 2 team in the land right now. Just beat Ohio State, who I thought might have had the best roster in all of college football, and Oregon beat them barely. I don't know if you guys saw that Oregon-Ohio State game. They barely won that game, but they still were able to win it. And Penn State right now is undefeated as well. They barely beat USC, and a lot of these matchups are close, but we play 2 of the top 4 teams in the country. But I still do feel like if USC, if we're able to put together a strong performance against them, I think you could turn this season around. And I do want to say this. I do think even if you lose this game, you can get momentum. If you lose this game and it's a dogfight and you really force USC to have to do a lot of different things and go into the deep bag of tricks to have to beat us, then I still think you can turn the season around because I think everybody thinks that Maryland's going to get absolutely demolished. Everybody, at least that's a Maryland fan that's in my comment section. After I said yesterday the Terps could surprise USC, I saw so many comments that were like, yeah, right. Maryland's losing by 60. Maryland's going to lose by 30. Whatever the case is, just go look at the comments from my last video. And I'd be lying if I said they don't have a good reason to believe that. But if you look at the guys at Vegas, and I'll talk about the spread later, the guys at Vegas think it's going to be a close game. And I'm not saying that it's going to be close. But the guys in Vegas have the line at 7. Like, that's not some blowout if they think it's going to be around a 7-point game. That's usually a pretty good game. And so I think that it's the last chance for the Terps to turn around. If you keep this game really close and it comes down to a last-second field goal, even if it's heartbreak, I think you can take some positives because you got to look at it that way at this point in the season. You got to look at USC and say, they're better than us right now. I don't think anybody would argue that. They just went toe-to-toe against Penn State, lost in overtime, and Penn State's really good. Penn State's really good. They're a really good football team with plenty of really good players. I think that they have one of the best defenders in the country in Abdul Carter. They're undefeated. They're ranked third in the country. They beat Illinois. They've played some really good teams. They play Ohio State a little bit later on, which will be interesting. But I think Penn State's a really good football team. Beat West Virginia early. And so they went head-to-toe with Penn State. And I thought, honestly, I was like, USC probably should have won that game. They were up by a good amount at the half. I was watching a lot of that game, and so I do think you could argue that USC should have won that game. They forced Drew Aller to throw 3 interceptions. I'm not quite sure how they don't win that one. So I think when you think about USC, you got to say they're better than us. They're better than us. And I think whenever you beat a team that has the brand that USC, the name that USC has, or make it really close, then that can propel you somewhere. That can move you forward. That can bring a lot to Coach Loxley. And I keep saying this. I always want to refer back to the Vegas lines because I always say Vegas knows best. If they're saying it's a 7-point line, then they have a pretty good idea that it's probably around 7-8 points for the line. That might have gone up by now because that's probably a really bad thing. But I think you got to look at it and you got to say the Terps have an opportunity to turn this thing around on Saturday, even I think with a close loss. I do think it's our last chance to do it, though, because I don't think we can beat Oregon at Eugene, and I'm going to go ahead and say that. Oregon on the road, Ohio State just went into Oregon, couldn't win. I mean, crazier things have happened for sure, but I don't see it. And I don't think any of you guys see it either. And same thing with Penn State going into Happy Valley on a Saturday and beating them with the current status of our team. I don't see it. But US, a team that has not looked awesome, has not looked unbeatable, has looked really good at times, has looked at times at home after they have to travel a long distance. I think you can see Maryland doing something with that. And seasons are never consistent. They're never just, you're going to Maryland. It's like everything isn't predictable. Like a lot of people are going to sit here and be like, yeah, Maryland's going to get crushed. And that very well could happen. But a lot of people got to remember, this stuff isn't linear. This stuff doesn't just like go in one direction where Maryland lost last game, they're going to lose, and they lost the game before, so now they're going to lose to USC by 30. There's always some weird mix-up. Look at Bama losing to Vanderbilt. There's always an oddball in these college football seasons, and this one wouldn't even be that odd. The line is 7 points. This isn't like the upset of the century if Maryland wins this type of game. It's definitely an upset. It's definitely something that would mean something, but I don't think it's as big as a lot of people. The gap is as big as a lot of people think. But I do think that USC is the better team. And I think this is a real opportunity for Mike Locksley to dig himself out of a hole that he's dug himself into this year and say, look at us. We were able to do something with a team that is more talented, with a brand like USC, a team that a lot of people talk about, a team that a lot of people care about, a team that has a lot of different guys that they've put in the NFL, that they've put in the Hall of Fame, Heisman Trophy winners. Like, a lot of historic stuff goes on with USC football. And so Mike Locksley has a chance to say, we just lost by 27 to Northwestern, but we are going to turn this thing around, and we have the ability to come up big with a huge win or make it a really propelling matchup against USC, which I think is something that is really important for the Terps. Let's look at some key matchups going into this game. Where can Maryland take advantage of? I'll talk about that after this ad from Hims. Guys, sometimes intimate moments happen spontaneously, and we always want to be ready. So when we perform in the bedroom, Hims provides access to treatments that can help you stay hard and last longer, giving you a boost of confidence so you can be ready whenever the mood strikes. Hims is changing men's health care by providing you access with affordable sexual health treatments from comfort on your couch. The process is 100% online, so there's no need for uncomfortable doctor visits. Start for free online and visit today at hims.com/lockedon. That's hims.com/lockedon to post your personalized ED treatment options. hims.com/lockedon. So there's a lot of key matchups for this game, and the USC team that has a lot of talent for sure on this team. I think the first thing you got to look at is the quarterback battle, which I want to talk about. Miller Moss versus Billy Edwards. I think it's fair to say Miller Moss has the edge. And I know Miller Moss may not have been having quite the season that he wants to have, but he's still a really freaking good quarterback. I believe in that kid, and I think he's really good. Because when I watch them play, I'm like, this kid's talented. This kid makes a lot of throws, and that kid has gotten them out of a lot of bad situations and different things like that. And I think that when you look at those two guys, Miller Moss versus Billy Edwards, I think Miller Moss is better. I do. I think that Billy Edwards could potentially have a better day than Miller Moss does, but I think that if I said Billy Edwards is better than Miller Moss, I think that would be a lie. I did see an interesting stat about Billy Edwards on PFF that he's like top 5 in the country in big time throws. And basically PFF tracks like big time throws. I don't know exactly like kind of like what the criteria is, but I do know that like a big time throw, think of it as exactly the name, like big time throws, like not your typical like check down or like a 10-yard slant. It's like if you have like a 30-yard like out route, like really tough in between guys, like that would be a big time type of throw. And I saw Billy Edwards top of that list, which is kind of interesting to kind of think about. But I do think as a pure thrower of football, I think Miller Moss has shown this year that he can be really high level at it. And against a Maryland secondary, which is something that I do want to talk about next, the Maryland corners versus the USC receiving room, I don't feel confident about it at all. And I don't even think USC has as good of a receiver core as they've had in the past. I think they're decent in a lot of different areas. I don't think that they're amazing. I don't think that they're like the best that we have, that like some of the best in the country. I think they have a pretty good type of receiver core, but I do think there's a couple of guys that are really scary back there. Sophomore Zachariah Branch, he's technically their number one receiver. They do have a lot of really good players and a lot of standouts. I just don't think they have like a one guy that you're looking at that's like he's really scary, but they have a lot of solid players. But this guy is like a freak. I saw him last year, like his first game of the season, and I was like, this guy's a little bit different. Like he's a different gear, and I'm really concerned about Maryland secondary stopping Zachariah Branch because he's one of the most explosive players in the country. And if you let him get going, if you let him get a step, it's going to turn into 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 steps, and he's wide open down the field. He's that type of athlete, and he's a really, really, really explosive type of player. And so I'm really concerned about us matching up. And they have another kid, Kyron Hudson, who's been pretty good, Jacoby Lane as well. All those three guys are their top three receivers that are all pretty good. Deuce Robinson as well, listed as a receiver. He's a really big kid. Mekhi Lemon too. This is what I mean. They have a bunch of different guys that they're going to throw out there that are pretty good players. And so that does concern me, and that's a matchup that I don't know if the Terps can win. They also have a running back that has been playing really good, and Woody Marks. He looks like a guy for sure, and he's been playing at a really high level. He's a redshirt senior. They also have a couple other guys behind him, redshirt freshman Quentin Joyner, who's averaging 9.8 yards per carry. And so they definitely have been able to run the ball. So I think that's another thing that is something where I'm like, how do we exactly stop them on offense? Because, yeah, I don't feel good about our corners, but I also think they have a pretty good group that can run the ball against. And I think that when we look at their defense hasn't been as bad as it's been in the past. It hasn't been like amazing, but I don't think that it's been bad. And I think they have one corner, Jalen Smith, who they feel really good about. And he's been one of the better guys on their team and in the Big Ten. It's definitely not one of the stronger units in the Big Ten, though. So I think that when you look at it, I think that this guy might match up with Ty Felton and might try and take Ty Felton away on the outside. We might have to throw Ty Felton inside a lot to get him away from the Jalen Smith kid. But I think that Maryland's receivers versus USC's secondary, I think, is something that we can definitely really take advantage of. They allow a lot of yards on defense. They allow, it says 349.8 total yards per game, which is the fifth most in the Big Ten. And so I think that it's something that the offense can score. We should be able to score against USC. And I think it's part of the reason the line's kind of low is because they don't necessarily think that USC is going to be able to just stop us. Teams are also averaging 151 yards rushing. If you saw them play Michigan a couple weeks ago, Michigan absolutely gassed them. Michigan threw for like no yards, and they didn't have to because they just ran the ball all over their defense. But that's my thing. Can Maryland's offensive line be decent and allow us to run the football? I'm not exactly convinced against a USC team, even that's been at the bottom of the Big Ten in terms of rushing yards. So it's an interesting defense. They only allow 21 points per game. So it's not like they're just giving up a ton of points, but they do give up a good amount of yardage, which is kind of honestly how I kind of want our defense to be. I don't think we're good enough to play defense where we don't give up points or yardage. I think we should play more bend or break ball. Like it seems like bend but don't break. That's the quote. I think we should do more of that like USC does, but we don't really. So I do think that we match up well with their secondary, and I think Billy Edwards should be able to throw the ball against these guys. I don't know if our defense can stop them. That's my biggest concern, especially that passing attack. What are my predictions? What do I think about the spread? I'll talk about that after this ad from FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-plays, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. If you guys want to go bet on college football this weekend, I'm about to talk about Maryland versus USC. The spread is USC -7. If you want to bet Maryland +7, or the NBA is coming back, you can start to bet that in the coming weeks. And then, of course, NFL Sunday, if you want to bet on those games. Also, baseball playoffs. There's so many different things to bet on FanDuel. That's FanDuel.com. All right. The spread, USC versus Maryland, is at 7 points right now, which I think is a little bit low. I'll be honest, I know I've been hyping up the Terps a good amount. I've been like, this is a really good chance to turn your season around. The Terps could surprise USC. But at the same time, let's be honest here. We have looked really bad the last couple of weeks. There's no if or buts about it. And I think that USC has definitely underperformed, which we have seen from USC over the last couple of weeks. So I do think there's a world where USC underperforms against us and doesn't play well. And I think when I saw the 7 points, I was a little surprised. I thought, okay. I thought that it would be closer to probably like 14, to be honest. I don't know what you guys thought, but I was like, 7? Really? We're really only 7-point underdogs? And that's still like a decent number for sure. But like a 7-point underdogs, you're not really supposed to just get blown out. And I think a lot of people think that going into this game. And yeah, I've had thoughts where I'm like, there's definitely a chance where this game we don't look good and our defense gets absolutely torched against Miller Moss and Zachariah Branch and the rest of their team, and our offense doesn't get things going. And next thing we look at, it's 40-10 USC wins. But I think that when I think about what my lean is on the side, I think I would have to say USC -7. I don't think you can say that Maryland +7. I just wouldn't be able to tell you guys that. And I do want to be positive about the team and everything, but I don't know I just don't see us winning or losing by less than 7 or winning the game. I can see us making it close, and I can see us getting it to maybe a 10-14 game, and I could see it being like a 7-point game, but that's not my best guess. I do see that. This USC team's really weird. I still am trying to figure them out. I don't even know exactly how good they are. It feels like they're really a top 25 team that's underperformed, but they did lose to Minnesota a couple weeks ago. But that's why I'm also concerned. I'm like, did we get USC in a bad spot? I know before the season I predicted us to win, and someone attacked me in the comment section for that. I didn't know you couldn't change your predictions once the season starts after you have a large sample size. Why would I still say that Maryland's going to win when I don't think that in my head anymore? But I do think that USC losses, USC losing to us would be really bad for them. And us losing to USC is kind of expected, I think, by most of our fans. So I'm just like, where do we kind of find ourselves in this game? Can we make it into a close game? And I think a lot of it's going to be on our defense. I think our offense can score. Can you find ways to get off the field? Because we know Lincoln Riley's a really smart head coach, and he knows what he's doing. I think that's fair to say. But can we get off the field? Can we figure out a way to get stops on third downs? Can we limit their offense where maybe they have some really big plays, maybe they do some different things, but we are able to play bend, not break defense where we get off the field on a third down inside our red zone and they have to score 3. I think that's going to be a big thing. I think they're going to get yards on us. They're going to be able to throw the ball on us. They're going to be able to do different things, run the ball. They're going to be able to do a lot on offense. But can you get a stop on a third down when you need it? Because they're going to score a little bit, and I think that's just the honest truth. But I think we will too. And I think you got to play some bend, not break defense. But I do have to say, I think USC wins the game by more than 7 points. I do. My exact prediction, I'll probably go 34-20 USC, and they win by 14. I think Maryland's able to do some stuff on offense and put up 20, which is not amazing, but not bad either. But I think USC's offense just is able to really get out there, and our defense really struggles. That's all we have for today. Thank you for listening to Locked on Terps. Make sure you like and subscribe. We're here every day talking Maryland football and basketball. So thank you for listening to Locked on Terps.